once again to Crazy Comics and Stories. It's me, your charming and delightful old Uncle Rat Bastard. And at the other end of the series of tubes and wires that we call the internets is Joe, Crazy Writer. How you doing today, Joe?
Did you ever see The Joker?
I have not seen it yet.
I haven't either. And as we're recording this, the Academy Awards happened yesterday. And now I'm like, although most of the people I know that have seen it are like, yeah, I probably won't ever see it again.
I'm going to be ordering it when it's out on Blu-ray because I wanted to see it, but I was just too busy. But, you know, from what I hear, it's got that very 70s dark taxi driver, Dog Day Afternoon type vibe. So it'll be interesting.
Now, I may go see Parasite. I guess I won for the best pictures. And if I do, I think I might end up doing that tomorrow night because, it's $5 movie night. And I don't know if they brought the movie back or they've just been letting it hang since the beginning. It's kind of a slow time of the year for movies anyways. So I might be talking about it next podcast. Or not.
You know what I'll be talking about next podcast?
Actually, I give us a preview.
I will be talking about New Japan Pro Wrestling because I have 8 days worth. They've been doing this basically on New Japan World. They run all their live events, and they just did 8 days in a row of shows.
I can't even tell you the last time I watched any wrestling. I mean, I just went through my program manager on my DVR. Comes with the dish box.
Yeah.
And I'm like deleting programs that are done.
Delete!
Not just things like Big Bang Theory, but NBC Nightly News, because now it's NBC Nightly News with Lester Holtz, which means that's been sitting there since what's his name? Brian Williams got shit canned.
Yeah, it's probably a good idea to delete those.
The NBC show Constantine, even though the actor showed up on the CW crossovers, I guess doesn't he hang with the Legends of Tomorrow? I'm not sure. Just all these shows, and sometimes there's shows that I like set up to record the whole series, but PBS just like shows 1 or 2 to fill up time. There's a whole series of them, but I must have just caught it when I was like looking through the what's on tonight thing. I thought, oh, that's kind of interesting. Like we talked about the one about the planets. I saw the show on the outer planets, saw the show about the inner planets. Have yet to see the one on the gas giants, even though I have it set up to record. So a lot, even Doctor Who, back when I was recording Doctor Who, when I had cable and I had BBC, or it might have been on Sci-Fi Network. I don't know, but I might as well get rid of these things. Because I don't record a lot. It takes me a long time to get hooked into a show. I know I could get very easily, but I guess that's why I started watching the Orville reruns again. I should say watching for the first time. I watched Orville with season 2 and I absolutely fell in love with it. Just goofy Star Trek with Seth MacFarlane humor. That's the best way to put it. And then I go back to season 1 where they were still kind of floundering, trying to figure out what to do, and I'm like, no, it's actually pretty good. Like I said, it's Star Trek, Seth MacFarlane style, So I'm enjoying it. Besides the new Orville, I have no idea when the next season's coming out, and it'll be on Hulu, just like everything else is.
Hulu. Well, you know what I got last week?
Oh no, you don't have the coronavirus, do you?
No, I'm so far behind. I got SARS.
Oh.
But I hold in my hand the new previews.
I've actually got mine on my desk. I don't want to get paper cut.
Well, it's pretty cheap paper. It's not going to cut you.
Oh yeah. Look at the high gloss they got on those DC Marvel supplements. Those covers, they're just waiting to slice the flesh of your thumb.
Well, why don't you open it up and talk about it?
I suppose you want to start with Image?
Actually, I'm going to start with the Free Comic Book Day part in the front.
I didn't even look at it because we just get ours from Tim up at Granite City.
But they list all of the free comic book day um, comics that are coming out. And of course, we're going to be getting them all in this year. We need to start, reviewing them rather than just, reading them and giggling to ourselves.
Well, what we do is we'll do one episode where we pick our top 5. And occasionally I'll revisit them, especially when I get to the point where I'm like, okay, well, let's give one of the 2 of these a try, and I find something I really like. There's been series that I've started because of it, and then series that I've read that I don't know, I just haven't. It's a good chance to give it a shot.
They also have a T-shirt and those plastic hand bracelets and stuff that you can order as well. This year's T-shirt is from Jeffrey Brown, and they show it on page 4. And it's Comics Are Forever. And last year's was a shirt that I absolutely love by Mike Allred. I don't know if I'm going to get this one or not. This one doesn't jump out to me because it's an actual 3-panel comic. And I don't want people looking at me that long. Basically, I just want them to see, oh, look, it's the cleaner, and move on with their lives.
I'm just sending a quick note to Tim to make sure he's going to put aside the boxes for us.
Okay. Well,
I figure I'll ask 4. You, me, Butch, and I don't know if Dan wants to buy a box or not.
Dan does. I don't. He said he wants to come along, so that's 4.
Oh, cool. So that's done.
All right, Image.
Page 56. Paul is dead. An original graphic novel. Yeah, it's writer Pablo Barron, artist. You do it, Cory. I haven't insulted anybody today. I want to kind of go through. Oh, Ernesto Carbonetti. Okay, that wasn't too bad. November 1966, London. John Lennon can't speak. He can't take his eyes off the photo of a car in flames with his best bud, Paul McCartney's body inside. His friend is no longer here, and that means the Beatles are no longer here either. But John wants to know the truth, and with George and Ringo, he will begin to re-examine the final hours of Paul's life. See the magical atmosphere of Abbey Road Studio during the writing sessions for Sgt. Pepper. St. Pepper. Paul is dead, the definitive version of the legend of Paul McCartney's death. Fiction? Nonfiction? You be the judge, but I'm picking this up.
I am too. The art looks beautiful.
It does.
It looks watercolor paintings.
And I've got a lot of, I think I have almost all the Beatle comics ever published, and I'm slowly picking up.
Except for one.
Well, that wasn't really a Beatle comic.
Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, the movie, the Marvel adaptation. I even have the movie.
I may want to borrow that from you sometime because
it's on VHS.
I have a VHS machine. I actually bought it from Gruber because I've got so many VHS tapes. I just want to be able to play them, or at least try to, like when I have, how like occasionally somewhere in the vast accumulation of tapes is a videotape of the day Superman died, and we actually had news crew come into the store. And it was kind of like where Dan Wiesemeyer was being interviewed by whoever the crew was. I was like pre-ringing books. Brian was ringing them. They came in again when Magic was big. So, different things like that where we actually were on TV and stuff like that.
Now, how old were you when you heard about the Paul McCartney is dead stuff?
I don't recall. It was, there was this thing on the radio, and I believe it was KDWB, where they spent the entire weekend doing a Beatles story, and it was very detailed, a lot of music, a lot of sound clips. Was it KQRS? One of the channels there. All I know is we had our little tape recorders with a handheld microphone, and we'd hold them up to and try to catch as much as we could. Mostly the music. A lot of smart ass comments in the background, especially when everybody was sad when Brian Epstein died. What the hell did I know? I had no idea what Brian Epstein was. But I did. That was the whole thing where they did the whole thing about, oh, we found that Paul died, blah blah blah, and they played the music. Paul is, and then they said, did he say Paul is dead, or did he say cranberry sauce? And then you stop and you go, good Lord, he could have said either one. So yeah, that was probably when it hit my consciousness. So we're talking like 75, 76.
Okay. For me, it was when I read it in the Beatles story by Marvel. I had never heard that rumor before. And then so okay. So I've got these albums and I'd play Revolution #9 backward and I'd do all the stuff and everything. And I
You
think it's,
see, there's the car on the Sgt. Pepper album that's upside down, and Paul's walking with bare feet, which is some Ugandan sign for
no,
death.
it's Hindu. Hindu.
Hindu, yeah, it's like, really, you're really reaching here. But hey, all I know is I saw the man in concert a couple years ago. I'm sure I talked about it on a podcast. He's doing a damn fine job, be it him or the original
Of
one.
imitating him.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, you've seen Bubba Hotep.
Yes.
We all know the truth about Elvis now.
They actually show Bubba Hotep on Comet TV about every month or so.
Oh,
You skip one that I am getting.
okay.
Firepower by Kirkman, and the reason I am buying it is because it's a Prelude original graphic novel. It's Robert Kirkman, but it's drawn by Chris Samnee. And I love me some Chris Samnee art, and they show some pages from it. I still love me some Chris Samnee art. Now, I will be buying, when it becomes a regular comic, I'll be buying it as trade paperbacks or hardcovers. But the original graphic novel, yeah, I'm jumping all over that.
You know, speaking of art, what got me on Art Alone, I was kind of hemming and hawing on this one, but way back on page 38, Adventure Man #1.
Yes.
Fraction with cover artists Terry and Rachel Dodson. They did the beautiful art in Red 1 and the upcoming X-Men Fantastic Four. Basically, it's a cataclysmic adventure, decades in the making. And it's triple size for $3.99, which is always a good way to start it. As you know, Cory, the greatest pulp hero of all time, Adventure Man, ended in a heartbreaking cliffhanger with our hero facing execution at the vile hands of his ultra nemesis, Baron Bazaar, on the eve of the macrocopocalypse. Or did it? 80 years after his apparent demise, a single mother, Claire, and her adventure fan son, Tommy, seems to be the only two people alive that remember the thrilling Adventure Man saga. But that memory, from that memory burns the spark of resurrection. Where his story ends, her story begins. And what did it for me is when I went back and I read the 3-page sneak peek that Image was smart enough to put in the catalog, and I said, oh, I remember why I bought Red 1, is because of the art and just gorgeous. So there's other things too, like the one you talked about, Firepower, where I'm like, I might want to wait for the bigger graphic novel. But I thought that with Adventure Man, but I thought, you know what, I'm going to go for it this time. And it looks to be fun. Plus, hey, if you can give me triple the story for the same price, I'm game for that.
Now, one of the things that Image is doing, Joe, read the very bottom of the first page there. Note.
Offered again. Oh, note.
No risk #1 title. Please see Image Vendor Tools page for more details. Basically, no matter how many you order, it's returnable.
Yeah, which is brilliant. They need to do that, especially comics companies like Image, Dark Horse, some of the other ones who you come out with a new series out of nowhere. You send me another Spider-Man, I know I can probably order it. But if you can let me order as many as I can, hey, I'll load up and let it go with that. Anything else out of Image catch your fancy?
Nothing else new out of Image caught my fancy.
I will point out, if you jump to page 67, Image is doing something absolutely brilliant where they're listing the $1 Image firsts. So if you, again, we're talking about trying a comic, excellent chance to try a comic. And I have almost all these. I haven't read a lot of them. Oblivion Song I loved, but I bought as issues, but eventually I decided to just switch to graphic novel. Snot Girl I've got waiting, Redneck, Deadly Class, and then down below, of course, all their first trade. I'm having mumble lips today. Volume 1 trade paperback collected editions, which are range from $10 to $20 if you want to do the Savage Dragon Archives. So there's your chance. We always talk about beg, borrow, or buy. Or no, ignore, borrow, or buy. Here's your chance, for $1. Go ahead. Fish under the couch. You got some spare change there. So, and that's pretty much it for me on Image.
Dark Horse!
Dun, dun, dun. All right, let's see what I got here. Page 86, Spy Island. I am really, really digging Dark Horse's miniseries. I've got a whole box of ones that I've read, a whole box of ones that I've to read, and I always kind of waffle between waiting to get all 4 of them or just go ahead and enjoy them one at a time. But in this case, I'm going to go with this one. 4-issue series. Super spy Nora Freud, no relation, has a plum assignment. She's stationed on a tropical island. Her mission, keep an eye on things. Her problem? The island's on the lip of the Bermuda Triangle where anything can happen. Her other problem? This particular island is a den of intrigue populated by spies, tourists, and evil villains set on global domination. So I thought, for 4 issues, I will give that story a try. And if I really dig it, I will give the next. If it sells well, I'll do the next one as well.
I'm interested in this, but I'm going to wait for a trade.
See, one of the reasons I do it for real is because if I don't like it, I can just eBay it.
Yeah.
And it's a lot easier to eBay issues than a trade. But either way is a good way to go.
Let's see, what jumped out at me? Flip, 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 flip. Oh, look! It's another Kabuki omnibus.
Yes.
I will pick up the Dark Horse omnibuses of series that I like, because really what they are, they're just, okay, it's not selling as great as it used to, so let's put it out in bigger, thicker books. And I like me some big, thick books.
Yeah, I like them thick.
There was a woman who is a comic fan who put a thing up online that, guys are sending her gross messages. And, one guy sent her a very gross message about something. And I said, I know what you need. You need a big, thick, hard Marvel omnibus.
Very true.
On page 107.
And hopefully you're not giving her the giant-sized man thing.
No.
Okay.
That's my giant-sized man thing.
Oh, he does not share.
I don't share anything. On page 107 is another EC archive. This reprints issues 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11 of War Against Crime, which was there were a lot of crime comics. This is what they call the pre-code. The pre-trend. There was the pre-trend, which was all the stuff they did before they started doing horror. New trend, which was, Tales from the Crypt, Vault of Horror, all those. And then the new direction, which was the stuff like Impact and Piracy and Psychoanalysis. This is another pre-trend book. It's got a lot of the artists from the later EC, but they're doing kind of just standard comics. It's not great. The stories are mediocre. They don't list if it has the early horror stories, because I know some of the pre-trend books had a horror story or two where they were kind of testing the water to see if people liked those. But if you're looking for your EC, here you go. This has some of the artists, including Al Feldstein, Johnny Craig, and Graham Ingalls.
On page 93, another miniseries. Cory, let's see if you can figure out why I'm buying this. It's called Dead Dog's Bite, a 4-issue series. Tyler Boss is writing it. Ian Bertram is I guess he's a variant cover guy, but I guess Boss is the artist too. Cormac Guffin has gone missing. It's been 3
Matt
days
Guffin. Matt
since no
Guffin.
one
I love
has
that.
seen hide nor I know. No, it's been 3 days since no one has seen hide nor hair of her. The police have nothing. The town fuck.
Count fuck.
Freudian fuck slip. The town folk are acting more like a funeral procession than a search party. If Cormac has any hope of being found, it rests on the slouching shoulders of her best friend, Joe. Joe will need her wits about her, though, because like any story worthy of hearing, nothing is what it seems. So, and again, 4 issues. I'll give it a try. I may rave about it in one of our review episodes. Anything else for you, Mr. Strode?
Nope, there was nothing else from Dark Horse this month.
I will point out one that I'm
Dark Horse.
I'm pointing out one that I'm going to pick up in trade, but just to mention, Alien Original Screenplay, back on page 88. This is basically they're taking what was the original screenplay by Dan O'Bannon and doing it much like they did with Star Wars, George Lucas's original screenplay. And you get to see the elements that they're same or different. 5-issue miniseries, or like I said, I'm going to wait for the trade because I think that'll be one that I'll really like and want to hang on to. Now it's time for you to set aside the large preview and get yourself your DC preview supplement. See what I did there? Supplement. And I got to tell you, Corey, I don't have a lot, if anything. The first thing that caught my eyes was way back on page 72. And this is the page where they have the dollar comics and the facsimile editions. And I'm actually looking to maybe pick up the 2 facsimile editions they're offering. They're doing DC Superstars number 17, which is it's not actually the first appearance of the Huntress because she appeared in All Star Comics at the same time. They both came out the same month. But this is her origin. And so that kind of is why that one seems to be more pricey if you look on the back issue market. And then down below is Detective Comics 475, which is Joker, the infamous Joker fish story. And
The Laughing Fish.
I don't know if I've ever read it or not. The cover's iconic, but
so
I'll
good.
let you know. And lately, I've been digging the facsimile editions, especially with older books. Was it last week I was ranting about Star Wars because just going through and seeing all the old ads and, when you look and like, oh, geez, I only got 10 books you can subscribe to, or I'm kind of digging that. So that was the first thing that caught my mind or my eye. Anything other than that, anything comic-wise didn't really float my boat, or it's just issues I buy or finishing up like The Question, Basket Full of Heads, last issue Dreaming's in there. But this is usually where I sit back. I've got a blank paste paper, my pen, and Cory, I've got a few more things I'll talk about, but Cory will mention something that I will look at, and I might actually add it to my list. So
I do.
Go ahead. Go.
I do want to point out that that's the same page that has 100-page Giants.
Mm-hmm.
So you got Batman Giant, Flash Giant, Swamp Thing, and Wonder Woman, but also Our Fighting Forces Giant. So I don't know if this is going to be the war comic that they pulled a while back or not. I also want to point out they're 100-page Giants. Joe, how many pages do they say they have?
96.
That's right. In 100-page Giants, they always counted the covers.
Yep. There's your trivia.
Back on page 1. Meanwhile, back on the page,
one.
When you belong.
Ian, please don't sue us.
The Joker 80th Anniversary 100-page Super Spectacular. I love these 100-page books. I really do. Let's see. I am going to be getting the 1980s variant cover by Bill Sienkiewicz. But it's 100 pages of Joker stories. Brian Azzarello, Paul Dini, Dennis O'Neil, Scott Snyder, James Tylan IV. Artist-wise, you got Simone Brianchi, who hasn't done comics in forever, which pisses me off. Tony S. Daniel, Jose Luis Garcia Lopez. Oh, wait, I have to say that right, don't I?
Yeah, he actually came.
Jose Luis Garcia Lopez. I have to say it like, who was the 80s announcer for WWE?
I have no idea.
But, the Fink.
Mm-hmm.
But he would always say, Jose Luis. I forget the wrestler's name, but there was this one wrestler, one of the job guys, and he would always, Luis Garcia Lopez. So I have to say it that way. On the next page is the 180th anniversary 100-page super spectacular Catwoman, which has a new story by Ed Brubaker and Cameron Stewart. An Ann Nocenti story, a Tom King story, a Mindy Newell story. Joe, do you remember Mindy Newell?
Yes.
She wrote a lot of DC stuff in the late 80s that I absolutely loved. You've got Cameron Stewart, Adam Hughes, Steve Rude, Jim Ballot. And I am trying to decide which cover I'm going to get. The 70s variant cover by Frank Cho, or the 50s variant cover by Travis Charest, or the 40s cover by Adam Hughes.
It'd be a lot easier if we could see these covers ahead of time.
I know, but we're not going to get to.
No.
A couple of things that jumped out at me is their young adult books that they're doing this month. Neither one are established DC heroes. The first one is Primer, which is a brand new superhero. And then the other one is You Brought Me the Ocean. So I think that's pretty interesting that they did those two that aren't connected with DC characters at all. There's also another Wonder Woman young adult novel.
That one actually looked interesting. I mean, if I had a comic shop still, those would be books I would definitely be picking up. If I had, my daughters are older now, but that's the type of stuff I'd have picked up for them right away.
Regular comic-wise, nothing new jumped out at me because everything's kind of in a holding pattern. They haven't changed any creative teams. They haven't started any new series. I wonder if they're all getting ready for 5G.
Well, I know if you're into the CW Arrowverse, you should quickly jump to page 77 and check out the Crisis on Infinite Earths Arrowverse Deluxe Edition hardcover. They're taking stories from.
Joe, shall I tell you what this is?
Yeah, they're reprinting Crisis on Infinite Earths Giants 1 and 2 from
Yep.
the. And they also add extras. So,
Yeah.
And as I did not buy the other two, I thought this might be fun to pick up and read.
It's a 100-page hardcover.
Oh, this is FC, so it's a 96-page.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't know what the heck does FC even mean.
Where is that? I see HC.
FC-DC Black Label. I don't know what that means. I see it on all the listings. FC.
Oh, I'm looking on page 77, and it's just hardcover.
Yeah. No, I was looking down by the ISBN number. FC. Oh well. So, yep. So that's on the list.
I am interested in getting DC Goes to War, which is on page 80. It reprints a bunch of the DC War stuff, including some of the newer things, including the Losers Special. Joe, what's special about the Losers Special?
They lost.
It's a Crisis on Infinite Earths tie-in that does not mention Crisis on Infinite Earths in any way, shape, or form.
It was kind of like since they died in the opening salvo of the Crisis, that this was their last chance to tell everybody who these losers were.
And the creator was supposed to make it a Crisis tie-in and did nothing of the sort. And because he was a former DC editor, they really couldn't change it.
See, on page 90 is Wonder Woman, The Last True Hero, Book 1. This is what happens after Perez had been working on the book, and William Messer Loebs jumped on. All the cover art was by Brian Bolin, and the art inside was a plethora of comic talent. And oddly enough, what's interesting, they reprint. I wonder why they didn't reprint number 65. Was that a crossover or something?
It might have been. I would have to look.
I will while you tell us what else you're looking to pick up.
I'm not looking to pick this up, but I do find it fascinating that they've got the Sandman box set, which has all of the Sandman trade paperbacks in one giant box set for $250. I do remember.
Never read it. A great way to do it.
Yes. I do remember when the Sandman trade paperbacks came out, they actually reprinted the first 3 with the slipcase to kind of push that, hey, this is a set. And I have that. That's the one that I bought. I think it was the first time that they had all 3 printed, because they just printed the first 3 right at the same time. I will be picking up Wonder Woman 750, the deluxe edition, because I like the Detective Comics deluxe edition and the Action Comics 1000 deluxe edition. This is kind of a reprint of the that issue with extra stories and behind the scenes stuff and essays and everything.
Okay, to answer the question about why didn't they reprint Wonder Woman number 65, no idea. It's well, okay, maybe it's because it was not written by William Mashier Loebs.
Oh, it might have been a fill-in then.
It was still done by Paris Cullens, who's one of the main artists. But yeah, William didn't have anything to do with that issue, so that's probably why it's not included. Fair enough.
And then on the page before that, there is a Maxwell Lord, and it's Wonder Woman, The Many Lives of Maxwell Lord, which means that Max Lord is going to be in the upcoming Wonder Woman movie. But yeah, that's it for DC. Not a lot jumping out at me either.
The only thing this is one I'm on the edge with. On page 86, Stargirl by Jeff Johns. And reprint stuff from the old Stars and Stripes 0 through 14, some JLA All Stars 4, some of the Secret Files, that type of stuff. I've never read these, but I have to think. I do normally like things that Jeff Johns writes, but again, depending on what my total is for the month, I may or may not pick that one up.
And
That's
now,
it for
IDW.
IDW. Page 1, 2, 3. I'm just counting today. Sleeping Beauties. This is based on the horror novel by Stephen King and Owen King. So if you like comic book adaptations, this might be something up your alley. A strange sleeping sickness known as Aurora has fallen over the world, and strangest of all, it only affects women. That's why it's strange. In a small town of Dueling, a mysterious woman has walked out of the woods. She calls herself Eve, leaves a trail of carnage behind her. More mysteriously, she's the only one not affected by the sleeping sickness. So I guess you can either go just pick up the horror novel, The Forgotten Girl, or just sit back and wait for the series to start.
On page 146, they collect the From Hell Master Edition that they've been doing as individual issues. The individual issues basically paid for all the restoration and coloring that Eddie Campbell did for this trade paperback. Is it a trade paperback? No, it's a hardcover.
Yeah, good deal for $50.
And let's see here.
Now, have you read From Hell?
Yes, I have.
I
read it when it came out as a comic. Then I read it when it was all collected.
I remember borrowing it to my wife, and she enjoyed it, but I have yet to ever get it back. So I may end up getting this just so I do have it.
It also has impressionistic hues and revisions from Eddie Campbell and all of the original annotations by Alan Moore, because Moore did tons and tons and tons of research on this, because of course he did.
Yep.
That's what he does. On page 148 is Glow versus the Babyface, which is a comic using the gorgeous ladies of wrestling based on the Netflix show. This one is co-written by A.J. Lee, going by her real name here, A.J. Mendez. So you had an actual comic written by an actual wrestler about professional wrestling. There you go, kids.
Come get some.
Let's see if there was anything else that jumped out at me. Nope, that was it for IDW too.
All right. On to Marvel. Dun, dun, dun. And of course, right away, the event is here. Empire. Some preview sneak art, oodles of crossovers, tie-ins with your favorite books. Me, I'm just going to sit back and get the main event. And in 4 or 5 years from now, I'll get the omnibus. It has everything in it.
Main event.
Yep. It's a 6-issue series. The Kree and Skrulls have united under the new Emperor, and the Warfleet's on a collision course for our world. On the moon, the Avengers are ready to strike with the full power of their mightiest heroes. Approaching from outer space, the Fantastic Four are seeking a diplomatic solution. And I had questioned as to whether or not the X-Men would be involved, and they are. And there's going to be a number of zeros tied into it, some miniseries, some one-shots. If you want to pick up the Empire Handbook so you know who's who, I may pick that up just because I love reading that stuff. But yeah, if you're reading X-Men, it's just going to tie right into it. So that answered my question as to whether or not the X-Men would be involved. Because when they originally soliciting for this one, hey, psst, you want to got your comics? See, you want to buy some? They didn't mention anything about the X-Men, but it's going to, I guess it's going to tie in there. And same thing with Fantastic Four. So big event time here in the old Marvel U. So line up and choose your cover.
Marvel Zombies is back with a miniseries. They're not tying into anything else. And the Outlawed is jumping out with a whole bunch of series, but it doesn't look like there's an Outlawed series. It's just a tie-in across a number of different series and some new one-shots. Black Widow's getting a new book. Yeah.
Well, Taskmaster's getting a miniseries, which is what I prefer. I mean, I like him as a character. He was a lot of fun in Avenger Academy. So we'll see what happens with this 5-issue miniseries.
The True Believers are Black Widow. It's Black Widow month. So a lot of cool comics there for the Black Widow True Believers. They also do a facsimile edition of Marvel Fanfare number 10. Do yourself a favor. This one's not as cool because Marvel Fanfare didn't have ads. Just buy the trade paperback. It's Ralph Macchio and George Perez doing a Black Widow story. It's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
I got nothing else in the comics. How about you?
See, I don't think I had anything else. Well, wait a minute. I see a Punisher. Oh, the Punisher versus Barracuda is not.
Oh, Barracuda.
Not by Garth
Ennis.
So, yeah, moving on.
Moving on.
So, nothing else brand new that jumped out at me. Let's see, flipping through.
Oh,
there was a series that I will pick up as a trade.
Oh, what was that?
Page 103, How to Read Comics the Marvel Way.
Just buy them.
Well, this is a pretty funny book. People who, in their hype for it, they say that this is basically it's a comedy thing. So it's, I'll wait till I hear the reviews, but if it's as funny as they say it is, this could be a lot of fun.
Cool. Could use a little fun.
Get ready, because Mysterio has trapped your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man in a comic book. He's going to help you navigate through the gutters, balloons, panels, pencils, and more so you can follow along while he figures out how to escape and save the day. And Then we get back to the trade paperbacks and hardcovers. Golden Age Marvel Comics Omnibus Volume 2.
Dun, dun, dun.
Reprints Marvel Mystery Comics number 13 through 24. I will be getting the cover by Alex Schoenberg, who did all of the covers back in the 40s. And his stuff was just pure chaotic, weird, action and fun. Alex Schoenberg's covers are something that I absolutely adored. And I remember when he did the cover for the comic book price guide. It was like, oh, he's still got it. Why isn't Marvel using him? Roy Thomas did use him on a couple issues of The Invaders, by the way. Let's see here. Marvel Masterworks is up 2 issues of the Hulk that I bought. That's always depressing. I am wavering on the She-Hulk Omnibus by Dan Slott because I have these trade paperbacks.
That's on my question list too.
It's a great series, and if you've not read it, it's fantastic. The premise of the series is that she becomes the lawyer for superheroes, dealing with cases involving superheroes, some of which are funny, some of which are serious, all of which are entertaining. This was a great series. I did not read it until Big Mike's girlfriend, otherwise known as Lisa the Prize Lady at the MCBA Comic Cons, told me that, oh, it's her favorite book. And she didn't read a lot of comics, so I picked it up and it was like, oh, wow, this is really good. And it's also before Dan Slott became a name writer. He was still kind of, oh, yeah, he's the guy who wrote Ren and Stimpy. Joe, do you remember the Absolute Carnage crossover and all the tie-ins and all the stuff that tied in with it and everything?
To be an omnibus soon?
It's an omnibus now!
Dun, dun, dun.
Yep, the entire crossover, all 776 pages of it, $75 omnibus. So that means if you order it from DCB Service, who doesn't pay us for an ad because, I don't know, you'll be able to get it for $37.50. 50 cents! Got a lot of good reviews. I am picking that up. Let's see. Flipping through.
Well, I've only got one
stuff.
thing I'll point out, and I'm not buying it because I have it, but on page 149, Wolverine Weapon X trade paperback. Current printing. This was written and penciled by Barry Windsor Smith, and this is the origin of Wolverine. Not the origin of Logan, that came out later, but just pretty much the definitive origin of Wolverine, where he came from out of the mysterious Weapon X program. When this stuff was originally collected in a, was it weekly or bi-weekly? Marvel Comics presents.
Bi-weekly.
Oh,
Comics
man.
was bi-weekly, and really nobody cared about Marvel Comics Presents at the time. It was, kind of, okay, inventory stories and maybe an X-Men story, and then they said, oh, Barry Windsor Smith will be doing the origin of Wolverine, and everybody kind of went, what?
Yeah, we lost our load way back in 1988. It was, that was the books to get, and I have no idea what they price at now, but it ran from like issues number 72 to 84. They've had a number of printings. I've got a hardcover downstairs of it. If you have never read this, you should pick this up. It's fairly affordable and just beautiful, beautiful art by Windsor Smith. Another guy we don't hear much from anymore.
On page 150 is Young Avengers by Gillen and McKelvey, the complete collection. Young Avengers was a book that came out, was super hot, but it was created by a guy who made a lot more money in TV. So they're like, okay, we're going to hold this concept for you until you come back. And he always said he was going to come back, but he didn't. So Kieran Gillen pitched a series, and they This collects the whole thing. It's Young Avengers number 1 through 115. The story from Marvel Now .1. Kieran Gillen went on to do, let's see, Phonogram, Wiccan and Divine, the Loki series. He's kind of a big name in comics now, but he doesn't work for Marvel anymore. I did not read these when it came out because I was being a comic snob. Well, if it's not the original creator. Then I heard how good it was, and it was too late. Joe?
Never too late in the land of trade paperbacks.
You were a big fan of Star Comics, right?
Yeah, let's go with that theory.
Top Dog, the complete run is being collected. I want to point this out for a very simple reason. When Harvey went under, Jim Shooter tried to get Marvel to buy it. But the people who owned Harvey really thought, we need to keep the rights to these characters for movies and TV, et cetera, et cetera. And, they did get a Richie Rich movie and a Casper movie, and I don't know if it was worth it or not. But instead, what Marvel did is they grabbed the creators and had them do kids' books, because back then Marvel was like, well, we need kids' books for kids to pick up comics and become hooked. It did not do well. I think it later became just kind of licensed books.
But there was a crossover with Spider-Man.
Was there a crossover with Spider-Man and Top Dog?
There was.
Oh.
It says it right at the beginning. Would you believe The Amazing Spider-Man? I don't know who was more embarrassed, Top Dog or Spider-Man.
But
for the longest time, that was the only Top Dog I bought. I believe it was like issue 5 or something. Okay, have we found your death mate?
No.
Top Dog. Oh, damn, I thought we were there.
Because actually, these are pretty good kids' comics. It's written by Lenny Herman and Sid Jacobson, who worked at Harvey. Dave Manek, who wrote and drew at Mad. And it's drawn by Werner Kremer, who drew so much Richie Rich and so many Casper stories that when you look at the cover, you'll see, oh yeah, I know that artist.
Okay, Spider-Man crossed over in issue 10, and you never guess which comic strip cat crossed over in issue number 9.
Well, that would be Heathcliff, because Marvel had the Heathcliff comic.
Yeah, and I guess they have the rights to reprint it too, because it's not excluded. So interesting.
The last one I want to point out is on page 157. There is Ms. Marvel meets the Marvel Universe. What this is, these are all the crossovers that Ms. Marvel has had. And you're going to look at the price and go, wow, $12.99? Yeah, it's a smaller size book. It's kind of not completely digest sized, but pretty close. But it's 250 pages for $12.99. If you've not read any of the Ms. Marvel stories, this is a really good introduction. It also has great story of, let's see, it's the crossover with Amazing Spider-Man was really cool. The Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur crossover was fun. It's just a fun book. I love Ms. Marvel. And these are all by... It's mostly by G. Willow Wilson, but there's also a Mark Waid story, an Amy Reeder story, a Dan Slott story. And that's it for Marvel that I had.
All right, next up, Dynamite.
Dynamite!
Now,
I use that joke every time, don't I?
And you can always tell how old a person is if they get what you're saying. The only new one I'm getting this month, and I've debated about it, whether get the miniseries, get the graphic novel, Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys, The Death of Nancy Drew. This has gotten a lot of buzz outside the comic industry. And, a lot of people, yeah, you're going to kill Nancy Drew, right, probably just a MacGuffin, whatever. It's not like it hasn't happened before. What got me on it, though, is the Hardy Boys. Because I grew up reading Hardy Boy books. They were basically kid detective stories, brothers, Frank and Joe Hardy. Hey, there's that Joe again. Nancy Drew was kind of like the female counterpart, and she had her own line of books. And, I always wondered why they never crossed over. I do remember an ABC show in the 70s where, that was it. I can't think of the actress's name who played Nancy Drew, and then uh, Sean Cassidy and was it Parker Stevenson?
Yeah.
They were the Hardy Boys, and so I would watch them back and forth. And when they finally did do the inevitable crossover, Nancy Drew was such a bitch to the Hardy Boys, and I was like, why are you that way? They're at least as competent as you are. Every book they solve. I haven't seen a solve rate since my Encyclopedia Brown days. There's a reference for you oldies. So for me, I kind of am reliving the glory of picking up a new Hardy Boys book, be it at the library, finding it at a garage sale, or because I had almost all of them, and I know I've read a lot of them, and they were numbered too, like comics, so they were easy to collect. And Lord knows what happened to them. Just one of those things that got purged when I became a man and I discovered, hey, I could buy more comic books. Hey, what's this Freak Brothers all about? Anyways, I'm going to pick this one up just because of I'm hoping a little nostalgia. The art looks pretty good, so they give some sneaks to the art because that would have been the killer for me. But that one I'm definitely going to, like I said, be picking up. Anything for you, Cory?
Page 169. They say back in print, Garth Ennis's Complete Battlefield Volume 1. I did not know that he did this series, so I will probably pick up all three. But anytime Garth Ennis is doing war stories, I'm going to pick him up. The guy is just, well, he's one of the best writers in comics, and he's one of the few guys who does war stories that aren't gung-ho, we're going to fight the enemy. He tells stories that are based on the horrors of war and the effect it has on people. And that's really about all that jumped out at me.
Unless you think I'm ignoring on page 166, The Boys, Dear Becky, I am picking this up as a graphic novel.
Yep, same here.
Because I'm going to pick it up. I haven't ignored it. If you're into comics, definitely pick it up, especially if you're into The Boys. And if you're not, Dynamite does have The Boys #1 for $1. So if your comic shop does that, you should be able to pick up a copy of it and at least give it a try. Because I enjoyed the hell out of the series. I enjoyed the is it Amazon Prime did the or Hulu?
Yep.
Yeah, Amazon Prime. Oh, I enjoyed their version of it. So definitely check it out.
Check it out.
Check it out.
Boom.
Boom.
Anything from Boom?
If you remember, I talked about a comic series called Faithless, and really dark, doesn't hold back. They have erotic variant covers, same creative team. I'm hoping same twisted sensibilities. I think after reading the original, it might be better as a trade, but I just pointed out because Faithless 2 is out, and it's coming at you full bore. And if you can tell by the art there on page 200 what it's about, if that gets your attention going, yeah, this one's definitely for you. I enjoyed the first run that I read. And now, anything Boom for you?
No, not really.
No Boom?
Just the regular stuff, Lumberjanes.
Yep. And now, how did they say it? And the rest.
Joe, do you remember when Ablaze was going to do Conan the Cimmerian?
Yes.
They're doing it again, this time with permission.
Ooh.
They are doing an adaptation of the story Red Nails. Now, I'm going to be rather blunt here. Red Nails is a story that was adapted for Savage Sword of Conan by Roy Thomas and Barry Windsor Smith. It's going to be damn hard for anybody to do a better job of that, especially if they're just going to, hey, we can put more sex and nudity in it. But they're going to try over at Ablaze.
And you can pick your cover, too.
Yeah, they got 5 covers, including a parody cover.
I know, I kind of like that one. That one cracks me up.
But they were able to get the rights to do it. They are paying the fees to Robert E. Howard. What it is, I dug in. over in Europe, Conan stories are public domain. So a European publisher has published a number of these stories, and Ablaze was going to reprint them here in the U.S. And the first time they said they were going to do it, Conan Properties kind of stepped in and went, oh, no, you're not. But they paid Conan Properties enough money that they're able to do it now. And that's the rest of the story.
On page 230, this is the part of the podcast where I do explain to you, yes, I do read all the descriptions I go through. And I'm now talking about the, Acme Inc.'s Tale of the Well-Hung Man #1, which is a 4-issue Western type series, which is one I would probably buy just because I think it'd be funny in a comic store to recommend Tale of the Well-Hung Man. Because you got to admit, giant-sized man thing has kind of run its course. No, I'm talking about from Action Lab Entertainment, Burning Rubber one-shot. Being a getaway driver is supposed to be easy, but when you unknowingly steal drug money from the Russian mob, money guarded by an outlaw biker, trouble can't be far behind. This is a hard-boiled one-shot, tells its high-octane crime story from the perspective of the getaway driver and the outlaw. And I thought, okay, for one, I'd have picked that up as a miniseries, but I'll give that my $3.99 one-shot. I'll give that a try.
The new series by Ahoy this month is
Ahoy?
Ash and Thorn. The apocalypse is nigh. The world needs a champion, and the only heir to a sacred mystic lineage is a little old lady. Meet Lottie Thorn, reluctant savior of the world, and her also elderly trainer, Lady Peruvia Ashlington Voss. They may not look like it, but these women are prepared to take on any big bad that comes along. But first, perhaps a nice cup of tea. I love anything from Ahoy. They have yet to do a bad series. The other thing that they do in their comics, it's a 32-page comic. The regular story is 24 pages. Then they have short stories and backup features and essays, and they really give you a great package for your $4. So there's your new Ahoy series. Ahoy, hoy!
Ahoy! My new one, I jumped to page 256, and it's kind of just to mention it because Sabrina the Teenage Witch is back in another 4-issue series. So if you like the first one or you liked her appearances in the regular Archie book, pick it up.
Also in Archie, they're doing more of their mini trade paperback reprints. They've got the new Archies, which was a series they did in I believe it was in the 90s, where it's Archie in middle school. And then they reprint more of Life with Archie, which were more of the alternate reality takes from spies to superheroes. There's also the Archie Milestones. Joe, I was reading some very early Archie stories, and I found out something I did not know.
Uh-oh.
Have you read any of the Archie stories from the 40s and early 50s?
Off and on, yeah. When they get reprinted in the big digests, or if I happen to luck across like some cheap stuff in like Poor Man Gold section of the quarter box.
Who was Archie's girlfriend in the 40s and 50s?
I thought it was just Veronica, but I'm probably wrong.
No, it was Veronica, and Betty was always trying to break them up.
Why, that little...
And then in the mid-50s, it switched to Archie not being able to choose between the two. But I was reading an Archie annual from the 50s, and it was, wait a minute, every story, Veronica's his girlfriend, and Betty's and Jughead are thinking up schemes to break them up. This is not what I'm used to. And it's funny how when they reprint the older stuff, they kind of tend to avoid that dynamic. So it's very much along the lines, I think, of, okay, we've changed this, and let's just never refer to it again.
Yeah. I ran across something like that with, I picked up a copy somewhere along the line of Dilton's Strange Science, and they talk about, well, they don't talk about, when you look at Wikipedia, they say like there was a Dalton type character who appeared early called Thaddeus or something, and he appeared a couple other times, and then they gave him a name, Dylan Dalton, and it's been that way. So always the early stuff. But what I love about the new Archie is that they will go back and find those characters and bring them forward.
Yeah.
So, which is always a treat for guys like me who have been reading that stuff for years. Let's cross. No, go ahead.
That was it that I had for them, but my next book is on page 271 from AWA. No, not the Vern Gagne Wrestling Company.
I'm gonna get you, Gagne.
It's AWA. They had all of their first issues last month. Did you say I'm not gonna pay $4 an issue for this stuff till I know a little more about it? Well, fine. You could get all 4 first issues in a trade paperback for $5.
Which is a brilliant idea for a new studio.
So I am all over that.
Yeah, that's on my maybe list. Of all the ones, I'm picking up the Straczynski book that he's doing with Deodato, The Resistance. Hotel is the description of that, which is actually across from the book you just mentioned, has my interest as well. But for $5, a bunch of number ones, hey, we'll give it a shot. And who knows, we may come back and Cory will read and go, oh my God, you got to read this, or yeah, you might want to skip this one. You never know. You play with the Strode, you get what you take. Meanwhile, I'm pretty easy. Go back to page 264. And I wanted to ask Cory about this because usually you know more about this than me. What caught my eye was the writer. The book is Cinema Purgatorio. Writer Alan Moore, artist Kevin O'Neill. And they basically take us on a trip through the dark recesses of cinema. This is their first major project together since League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. And they go with the power of movies, people behind it, the damage it has done, the story of one woman forced to bare her soul. It's all unspooled, one short film at a time. Every chapter is different, yet it all weaves together in one tapestry of breathtaking complexity, as only Alan Moore can do. It's 18 chapters, which means it was probably a mini-series somewhere along the line. I've never heard of this, but I thought I'd give it a try. But I know, have you ever heard on this one, Cory?
Yeah, what it is, it was a bunch of short stories that they did, and I like how it says, it's their first project together since League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Well, after the first League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, yeah, but this reprints all of those old things, and Alan Moore, now that the final League of Extraordinary Gentlemen story is over, he's done. There will be no more new Alan Moore comics. But yeah, this is good. It's a lot like the Avatar Press stuff, where they're not giving Avatar Press their best. They're giving Avatar Press their, okay, well, I did this. Here, you want it?
Come get it.
But it is better than a lot of the other Alan Moore stuff, which is basically he wrote an essay or a short story and they give it to one of their writers to turn into a series. So this is actually by Alan Moore.
What else you got?
Oh, I'm flipping.
Well, I will. I'm already flipped to where I'm going to go. I'm going to point out something of interest. I don't know if I'm going to buy it because I actually have not an original copy, but a facsimile. On page 300, they're coming up to the 50th year of Overstreet. So while they're pushing volume 49, number 50 is coming up real shortly. But here is a facsimile of the first edition of the Overstreet comic book price guide. The only other one I'm aware of was a reprint that I think was in Heroes magazine or their price guide or something. I actually had one and sold it on the eBays a while back. And then lo and behold, going through Greg Ketter's stuff over at Dreamhaven, he has a copy or had it of an original price guide. And they were pretty pricey, even the reprint one. Well, here's your chance at a way, way less than it would cost to find that Heroes reprint. You get a soft cover or you get a hardcover. The one I'm eyeballing, the signed and numbered hardcover, because I like signed and numbered stuff. and they only make 100 of them, so it's kind of like, I might get it, I might not. So if you're,
And you can look through it and cry when you look at the prices.
yeah, it's the type of thing. In fact, I'm just gonna type in Overstreet price guide.
Spider-Man number 1, $10.
Oh, sorry, I just choked on something. Let's see. The lowest price one you can get. Oh, yeah. See, again, sorry, I got to go through a bunch of number ones. Dun, 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 dun.
Now, this is an exact reprint because the one they had in, I think it was Heroes Magazine, just had the prices. This is everything. It's got the original prices, the articles, the ads. So you can look through, see if Schindler's had an ad. I know Schindler's had ads through the 70s.
I'm still trying to figure out who did the reprint on this. I see the first one I run across for $60. And then if you want an original one, you can get up into the thousands. I mean, that's how rare this thing is. So yeah, for guys like Cory and I who just love this type of stuff, $16.95 might be something fun to just look at. Or I might go nuts and pay $50 and get the sign numbered. And then if I don't get it, I'll weep bitterly because I should have just gone for the hardcover to begin with. So just kind of a historical.
Who was it who told you to always buy the hardcover?
John Nunziata from St. Paul Comic.
Yep.
And he was correct because not only do they hold up better, but they have a better resale value. And a lot of people were buying the hardcovers because, it was actually, well, I think it was like $20 and then $40 for the hardcover. Now it's a little bit less. I mean, $30 for the softcover, $35 for the hardcover. And then you could even go to like Heroes Initiative, and they have a very limited edition of theirs that sells for usually $40. And if you're going to buy it to use and then maybe resell, get the Heroes Edition because there are less of those than you'll see around. The last one I bought, it's right here. Let's see, 2017-18, number 47. So I may end up getting the 50th edition, but it hasn't been solicited yet. So we will wait because the road to Overstreet 50 will continue. By the way, Diamond has a really neat kind of a overview of Overstreet, and a couple of pages there on page 301, 302. So, sometimes the ads are pretty informing if you want to look at it. Let's see.
I want to point out, not only is on page 344, they're still doing the best of 2000 AD, but there's also a book, The Masters of British Comic Art. It's a $50 kind of a coffee table book, but it goes through the British artists, some that we here in the U.S. know and some that we don't. It's a good primer on finding out about who are these people who worked on 2000 AD and the comic biz and Beano and all the stuff that we hear in the U.S. when they mention it go, huh?
What page was that on?
It is on page 344.
344, because, I'm like, T. Okay, I'll go down to the T. No, it's not quite there yet.
And then over in Titan Comics, let's see, I am picking up A Bloody Business, which is a new, it is a new hard case crime novel, which has 24 stunning illustrations by Drew Struzan. I will buy anything that Hard Case Crime puts out. They have yet to put out a bad novel. If you're looking for your crime novels, these are the people to go to. There is also another Firefly novel. I've said for years, why aren't they putting out Firefly novels? There's huge fan demand. Well, now they are, and this is the fourth one.
We got to talk about giving away our $1 million ideas, man. Just,
Yeah, but that's why people listen.
That's
why people listen. On page 362, They are doing a new printing of American Comic Book Chronicles 1960 to 1965. If you have been tempted by me talking about it, this is the one to get, because 1960 to 65 is the birth of the Marvel Universe. You also had a ton of other comic book companies coming around. The 60s was so full of stuff going on in comics that it's the one decade. Well, they split the 60s into two books. The 40s will also be split into two books, but that's more because from 40 to 45 it's very superhero, and then from 45 to 49 the comic market was very, very different. But this book is fantastic when it goes into what happened when, what the sales trends were. You know, we all think that Marvel exploded and eventually, and was able to beat DC. DC sold 4 to 5 times as much as Marvel until around the end of the 60s. It wasn't until like 72, 73 that Marvel finally overtook DC in sales. So this goes into a lot of what went on behind the scenes, a lot of information as to what was printed when. And I think that's just about, yep, that was it for me. I went through Viz and there was no new Viz stuff that jumped out at me.
I did see a new Transformer book, but that was back in the manga section. Last two things for me were back on page 347 under Scout Comics. First one was a one beginning issue called Everglade Angels. A wrong turn down a dead-end road, a car that won't start, an unspeakable evil emerges from the darkness. No phones, no car, no motor. No phones, no weapons, no escape. Think you've seen this all before? Think again. When a girls' softball team takes a shortcut through the Florida Everglades, they veer off the path towards a night they'll never forget. Drinking, dancing, and one last hurrah before college starts. When they stumble upon a trap set by a murderous cult, the stage is set for a night of blood-soaked carnage, but the cult has never dealt with victims who are ready to fight back. Everglade Angels. Kitty corner to that is a trade. A couple months ago, Scout did a world premiere issue. Well, here's the trade paperback. It has the whole story. Called Tart. The rulers of hell have lost an asset of power, and they are willing to tear the world apart to hunt it down. As a team of time-traveling demons hunters, known as the Toxic Fruit, work to thwart them, their newest recruit, Tart Acid, learns what it's like to continually fight the hordes of hell in order to protect all we experience from crumbling into chaos. So that was it for me as well.
It's not it for everybody, though, Joe.
It isn't.
No, there's these guys, our sponsors. Normally in this space we have advertising, but for the rest of the year, in the spirit of giving, instead we're giving our advertising time over to fundraisers to help people who are in need. And the best place to help comic book creators who are in need is the heroinitiative.org. The Hero Initiative raises money and helps creators with medical issues, finding work, fighting homelessness. These are comic creators who may be switching careers, may have fallen on hard times, or they may have worked in the business for a long time. And as you know, comic book companies, everything there is you're paid by the page. It's not a salary. It's not benefited. It's not with a retirement. So this is how we can help the creators who've made our lives better by their work. Head on over to the heroinitiative.org in order to donate or buy items. Artist Tom Lyle, who drew tons of comics over the years, including a run on Spider-Man during the Spider-Clone saga, helped create the Tim Drake Robin, passed away recently, leaving his spouse with medical bills. You can donate by going to GoFundMe.com and looking up Tom-Lyle to donate to help pay off those medical bills from his hospital stay. If you are a wrestling fan, you know who ODB is. ODB is a Minnesota gal who got out of wrestling and got into the food truck business. One morning she woke up and her food truck had burned to the ground. She is running a fundraiser at Indiegogo, so go to Indiegogo.com, put in Help ODB Get Cooking Again, and you can purchase her wonderful sauces, autographed pictures. All funds go toward helping her buy a new food truck so she can start her business again. These are people who need your help. If you know someone who needs help or has a fundraiser, please let us know by sending an email to solitairerosenetwork@gmail.com, subject advertising. And after the first of the year, when we get back to regular ads, you can buy an ad too. Again, it's solitairerosenetwork@gmail.com, subject advertising. Thanks.
I have no idea which one Cory's using, but believe me, the outtake was funnier than what you heard.
And if you think that, this episode's a previous episode, it's going to be 2 hours long, but I want more.
More!
There's all these podcasts. The Solitaire Rose Radio Network has all sorts of podcasts for you. There's, of course, Crazy Comics and Stories, where myself and Crazy Joe Ryder get together once a week to talk comics. We review comics, we talk about upcoming comics, we talk about comics history. Anything that has to do with comics, we're going to talk about. We also have Series in Review, where we review series and kind of give a DVD commentary of past comics that we've enjoyed. There is also Solitaire Rose Radio. Solitaire Rose Radio is my solo show where I discuss upcoming comics, past comics, comics history, and interview comics creators. These are all at crazycomics.solitairerose.com. There's also the podcast I'm proudest of. That's Novelcast, where I take the novels that I have written and turn them into audiobooks. That's at novels.solitairerose.com. Over at Bad Advice, myself, Dan Moore, and Wolfie B. Bad take your questions and give you bad advice. It's at badadvice.solitairerose.com. Now, don't think that I'm doing all the podcasts, because there's also Scrabbling Across the West by Dave Coffell and Stephanie Coffell. Dave is a musician and Stephanie is his wife. They travel the country performing music and playing Scrabble over at scrabbling.solitairerose.com. And finally, the newest member of the Solitaire Rose Radio group, that's Fantastic Forecast, where myself and host of For the Love of Comics, Adam Vermillion, go over the series The Fantastic Four, 4 issues at a time. That's available at fantasticforecast.solitairerose.com. If you would like to advertise on any of these podcasts, you can. Just email me at solitairerosenetwork@gmail.com. Thanks. And now we get to Joe's favorite part of the show. No, not where you give him 2,000 Super Bowls to drop off the ledge of the 4th floor of the Mall of America.
Yeah, and I'm talking lots of them.
It's what's going on the eBays, Joe.
Things are still heating up. I mean, lots of things are going. I put new stuff up. It sells faster than sometimes I can get to this here podcast and talk about it. Although I thought I would stop and let's run a couple Does the Strode Knows, because as I'm researching
the Strode for you.
One of these,
no. Come on, man.
But one of these you already know. Man. Cory, tell me about EC reprints, about Russ Cochran's 1992 EC reprints.
Oh, the 92 ones. He started printing the EC stuff as regular comics. He had tried kind of the Marvel graphic novel, European style, larger reprints. They didn't sell. He then tried Treasury reprints, and they didn't sell. So he started reprinting them as regular comics. I actually picked them up when he would take he basically reformatted them, the ones that hadn't sold, and turned them into annuals where he would grab, okay, here's 5 issues in a row. He'd put a new cover on them and sell that. But they weren't exact reprints because they had new letters pages and new ads.
Okay, smart guy, tell me about the Gladstone EC reprints.
Those were Gladstone was how they first started, and I think those were the graphic novel size, because Russ Cochran had basically he was working with Gladstone, because at the time Gladstone was a separate company. Now it's part of Overstreet, but they reprinted all of the Carl Barks stuff in the same sort of box sets as the EC box sets, they also reprinted all the little Lulu in those box sets as well. So Gladstone had started reprinting a bunch of Disney comics in the 80s, and Russ Cochran kind of piggybacked off them.
Okay, what about the reprints in the 70s?
Those were from East Coast Comics. There were, I think, 12. And they reprinted kind of random issues. Those were the first EC stories I ever read, because in that comic book price guide, number 9, they had the big article on EC when Bob Overstreet had completed his EC collection. What? And they had kind of reprinted them as underground comics. They were $1 each when regular comics were still 40 cents.
And the reason I had Cory blather on and on about this in my segment was because I discovered all this stuff as I had a pile of these reprints, and I was going to just put them, well, they're on the eBays now. And I was like, okay, why do I have 2 Weird Science number 2s? Eventually, as I went in and discovered, well, price point's different. And the shocker was that one, I got a Shock Suspense Stories number 6, which had a $1 price point on it, whereas the other ones, you can tell, like the Gladstone ones were $195, and the ones that Russ did later were $150. And it was just kind of interesting to see different companies reprinting the same thing. And I don't know, maybe it's about time we have another company start reprinting this stuff. Just saying.
We already have. Dark Horse has reprinted them all in. No,
I'm talking about individual issues. Of course, that might not be viable anymore.
It wasn't really viable when Russ Cochran did it, because by the end, even Weird Science and Tales from the Crypt was only selling around 10,000 copies, and that was when Spider-Man was chucking out 750,000.
All right. Well, let's see. On the second book I discovered, does the Strode know about the FF?
Yes, that was a weird little series. What it was, Mark Waid was doing the FF, was doing the Fantastic Four, and Bill Jemas wanted to bring in, I can't pronounce the guy's name, but he's the guy who kind of revamped the Archie books with Archie, Afterlife with Archie, and turning Sabrina into a horror comic. He now works pretty much exclusively in TV, but he was a playwright, Robert Aguirre something. He's the showrunner on Riverdale and Sabrina. And what this was is, I think they ended up doing it as a Marvel Knights series, where Reed Richards lost all their money, and they didn't have all their scientific stuff, so instead they're kind of working out of a townhouse. It was supposed to be a back to the basics, but it's really just not very good.
Well, that wasn't quite what I was looking for, although you were getting close. Perhaps if I had just given you the initials of the title. How about if I say, Cory, tell me about the super heroics of the Awesome Foursome? You don't know anything about the Awesome Foursome?
I'm baffled. I'm hoping it's not that Dell series.
No, it was comprised of Miss Grundy, Coach Clayton, Principal Weatherby, and Mr. Flute Snoot, who worked together to save the kids at Wakakumi from the laughable mischief of the Clapper. Yeah, the name of the series was called Faculty Funnies. This came out around, and you were close. You mentioned Archie. And for some reason, I got a whole run of it. There was only 5 issues.
Wow.
I know. There were other issues of Archie that came out. I mean, Archie RC Racers, Remote Control Racers, Archie 3000. None of these really last long. They're forgettable. But for some reason, this run actually has a little bit of heat to it. And I actually had a full run of it. So if you want to see all about the Awesome Foursome in Faculty Funnies, I got a run on the eBay. And finally, Cory, you know about Big Boy and his wacky adventures?
Yes.
Can you tell me who was the only superhero he ever crossed over with?
I cannot.
I'll give you a
We
hint.
did not have Big Boy anywhere near us.
Well, you didn't need to have a
I've
Big
never
Boy
been to a Big Boy.
because they license these comics out to various chains. So if you flip the cover over, just like March of Comics, where like Sears might stamp it, or Red Wing Shoes might stamp it, or Red Goose Shoes, that was the big one. You would flip it over, and there was a space on the bottom for whoever they were shipping these comics to print their logo in their particular chain in the region. And they must, I don't know if these chains just bought from Big Boy or what the deal was, but he did cross over with one person. I'll give you a hint. Da, 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 da.
Well, Superman.
Da, 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 of course. And his one crossover was The Adventures of Big Boy number 266. I don't have that issue, but I do have some other ones on eBay. So if you're interested in seeing what I have, come take a look. KRAYZ. It's going 24/7. And I spent a lot of time adding stuff this last week, and we'll get to it about when we get to freaking as to why I'm kind of freaked about it. But I'm not freaked about the eBay. So when you're done here, go check it out. Send me a quick note if you ever want to make an offer on something, or if you are buying something, send a note so I know you're one of our valued listeners, and I'll send you a little extra something. That's the way I roll around here. I just had a guy buy a huge lot of Dynamite magazines, and just for the heck of it, I sent him a bunch of coverless ones because I didn't want to deal with the coverless ones. KRAYZ, come get some.
Does Joe know? It was announced today what the best-selling Funko Pop in history is. Does Joe know what it is?
Other than watching Funko Pop talk about how their sales were down over the Christmas, although they're still doing quite well, they were down. I don't know because I usually don't care about Funko Pops.
The Child.
Really?
Yep. Baby Yoda is their highest selling figure of all time, and it hasn't even come out yet.
I can believe it. You should see the number of people who are making stuff. A lot of Disney lawyers going through the craft sites, knocking down people on Etsy and eBay and that. So if you're bootlegging one, you probably don't want to make it known because Disney, they didn't know what they had, and now they do. So it's a little bit late. That's interesting. I may actually get one of those, depending on what it looks like. Sometimes the heads are so.
It's in previews. It's in previews.
Oh, really? Oh, then I definitely ain't getting it. I must have looked at it and said,
or you just didn't look on that page.
No, I looked through it, so I probably saw it and didn't think much about it. But that's okay. They're not necessarily for me.
And now we get to my favorite part of the show. No, not where I freak out over the cost of the Rush Funko Pops now that Neil Peart's passed away. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. No, it's Freaking and Geeking. Joe, what you freaking on?
I didn't buy that pop figure because it's one of the 10-inch ones.
Ah.
I like the smaller ones, which are like 3 1/4, 4 inches tall. But yeah, you put that on your table at work. See who's a Star Wars fan.
Probably wouldn't be there when I got back from lunch.
Yeah, I could see that happening. I didn't know how to bring this up, but I had a comic that I picked up on our Black Friday sojourn.
Travels.
I couldn't believe I bought it just because the cover was weird, and I think it was probably at one of those, I needed a comic to fill out like a 10 for 20 or 20 for 10, whatever. Have you ever heard of Murder Can Be Fun from Slave Labor?
I remember seeing it. I never read it.
Yeah. It was kind of a fanzine that contained articles about accidents, deaths, tragedies, and catastrophes, and a comic strip adaptation of those articles. Really morbid. And the one I got was number 5, which had inside the Karen Carpenter diet. It's to die for.
Oh.
And then she opens her shirt and there's like nothing but skeletons. She's singing, "I've only just begun." Yeah, that ain't staying in my collection. It's on eBay if you want it. But the problem is they're really expensive. I mean, I picked this thing up cheap. Number 2 guide's at $20. The one I talked about has a guide of 11. So number 10's, good Lord, is that like $30 for a mint copy? And I don't know what's in them, but if you're into that darker type humor, and I can be, but no, this one wasn't for me. And again, okay, another freaking I'm doing. Everybody, I need a collective groan and sympathy, and I'll settle for mock sympathy. I got to go to work tomorrow.
Yeah, I remember when I had to go back after getting my eye surgery, and there were 2 things that pissed me. Well, 3. Okay, 3. The first was I put in for an extra week because I was still wanting that extra week, but my eyes weren't exactly focusing as well as they should for me to be looking at a computer 8 hours a day. They approved me to have an extra week at the end of my first week back at work. It's like Friday afternoon, "Hey, we approved you to be off this week." Well, thanks. I've been at work all week. Second thing was I came back and no one made a big deal of it at all. And the third thing was I had to go back to work, and I didn't want to.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm doing. I did go in last Friday. I brought my doctor's note in. And my supervisor was like, "Oh, I think they're so short, people." And the people I saw were cool, but I just want to get the ball rolling, get the approval, because now I got to go tomorrow and wake up at 6 o'clock, which is a big deal for me because my shift doesn't start till 11:30 a.m. And that means I've got to rejigger my sleep schedule, which I've been trying to do, because frankly, these last couple months, I've just been up till like 4 in the morning watching television or reading comics or, doing whatever on the eBays. And now I can't do that anymore. A couple other things have been going weird. I mean, we got to rebid our schedule, so it's going to throw my summer schedule time up in the air. They actually cut 3 spots in my area, so now it looks like I'm going to Checkpoint, which is really weird because it's just like in the morning, they didn't cut any spots, but in the afternoon they did. We do 3 times as many bags as they do. And talking with some of my friends when I reached out and I said, "What's going on with this?" They're like, "Oh, things are so toxic. People are just upset." And I'm kind of like, yeah, this is really making me want to go back to work. So I was really down about it. I'm a little down about it now because it's here, but when I was ready to go back to work, I finally got myself in a good place. Okay, I'm ready to go. And then I reached out to my friends saying, "Hey, I'm getting ready to come back. What's going on?" "Oh, you wouldn't believe the scheduling's all messed up. Everybody's patting themselves on the back." One thing I've talked about in my job, because I'm in bags, we sit for hours at a time because it's not a nonstop litany of bag checks. It can be, but a lot of times there isn't. But they took away, we can't listen to music, we can't read books. From what I can tell, they took away our seats. And I'm kind of like, the idiots making these decisions, and I'm using that term lightly, aren't the ones who sit with me for 10 hours a day watching my job. They just look on the camera and see, "Oh, look, baggage isn't doing anything. We better cut their numbers." Yet when we're busy beyond belief, which oddly enough happens the same time the checkpoint's busy. Wow, what a correlation. You think after 18 years they'd figure it out. Then I look at the headlines out of Washington and they're all yelling, "Yeah, we're thinking about cutting back on TSA." Remember that next time you're standing in a long line at a checkpoint. It's not necessarily us. We are here. We are a bureaucracy because right now politicians and administrators are trying to cut the budget to make themselves look good. What that means is less of us, longer lines for you. If you don't complain, nobody cares. That's got to be my attitude, Cory, because it's like, and I don't want to necessarily go in on fire. In some ways, I'm glad I know what I'm stepping into, because if I came back to all this and it would be like, you know what? I don't need this shit. I'll just go sit in a closet and podcast 24/7. You make a lot of money on that, don't you, Cory? Don't you? Just lie to me.
Lie to you? We've never made a penny.
Woohoo! thank you. Anyways, so I'm a little bummed about that. But on the plus side, in 4 years, 11 months, 26 days, 3 hours, 23 minutes, and 25 minutes as of now, based last week. So for you that's tuning in, it's actually down now to 3 weeks or 2 weeks. But yeah, I just got to put in my time and keep my mouth shut and sit back and enjoy things. What really is kind of a bummer is, we talked about the plethora of graphic novels we found on our Black Friday thing, and I was thinking, well, here now would be my chance to sit and go through them and give some reviews. But oh well. There's also another thing that's driving me nuts. Arg. Have you heard of no-see-ums, Cory?
No.
There are these little tiny bugs down in Florida. They're called that because you can't see them. They go through normal screens. In Florida, you have to have a special no-see-um screen so these little buggers can't get through you. They bite with the ferocity. They itch, they hurt, they swell, they scratch of a mosquito. So this little thing bites you, flies away, and suddenly you got this big welt that doesn't go away, itches for weeks, might scab over, might pus over. Well, I know where every no-see-um hit me. And it's itchy. Ooh, scratchy. Ooh, you can just feel it, can't you? Oh, Cory, I got to itch for a bit. What are you freaking on?
Tell me lies, tell me sweet little lies.
Well, I was going to tell you can now cuddle an adorable penis pillow, but apparently that's true. 9gag.com.
Joe, do you have your DC previews in your hands there?
It is buried under all the other ones, but I can certainly pick it up.
Can you read?
Oh, paper cut!
Can you read me all of the DC omnibuses that are coming out?
Well, I didn't have to pick it up for that.
Yeah, there are none. And yet, when you look at last year, the top 500 graphic novels, there are some websites that have it by the amount of dollars they pulled in. The top 25 books for dollars are pretty much all omnibuses. You look at the sales of the last few omnibuses DC has done. Yeah, they're selling about 1,000 copies. Guess what, kids? That's $100,000 in retail for comic shops. That's $50,000 in, $45,000 for DC for just repackaging their old stuff.
And yet, it's not returnable. Every omnibus that a store buys, they keep because they're not returnable. You don't see omnibuses at Barnes & Noble or any market outside the direct market.
But nope. DC, not going to do that. By the way, I was buying the Tom King Batman because remember when they started the Rebirth, they would have these nice deluxe hardcovers to reprint the Rebirth stories. They just kind of stopped with number 4 and have not picked up again. And after reading interviews with Dan DiDio, they're not going to because, we've learned that after number 3 or 4, people don't buy them as much. So great. I have this format, and then I have to go to a cheaper, less durable format for the rest of the story. Great. As we are recording this today, it is the anniversary of Steve Gerber passing away. Steve Gerber was one of my favorite comic book writers. He passed away while writing a story. He was working on the Dr. Fate story that DC published. And the last part was actually 3 different writers wrote what they thought Steve would have ended it with. And still, all I can think is all the stories that we didn't get. But also, I've become Facebook friends with a number of his friends. And all of them have talked about the same thing I've talked about, where he was kind, he was generous, he was amazed that anybody read his stuff. And when it got to the Dr. Fate story, what the hell?
Oh, just me digging through my piles of crap.
When he got to the Dr. Fate story, I've told this a few times, he asked if someone could explain the post-crisis Dr. Fate. And nobody jumped up and said yes, so I said I would. And I wrote up the history, and it was like a 10, 15-page thing about, there was this miniseries that set up this, and then it wasn't followed up on, and then this story, and then, and they did a read thing here. And when he emailed me back when it was done, and he said, "You seem to be a big Dr. Fate fan. Would you mind if I threw all of this out and started over?" And I, of course, said, "Look, if the story demands it, I'm not a big continuity guy. Yeah, I know the continuity, but if the story's good enough, and besides, look at this continuity, no one can pull this into shape." And as I've read interviews with him and interviews about him, back in the 70s, he was called very self-indulgent, that he only wrote for himself. But stories like that, the stories you're going to read about him on Facebook from his friends and from fans who met him, was that he was really concerned that he wrote stories that people liked. He was really concerned that he wrote stories that people enjoyed. He came from his perspective, but it wasn't self-indulgence. It was, I want to make stuff that's a step above what's being published right now. I want to do stuff that stretches people's minds so that not only do people enjoy what I write, but they think while they do it, and maybe I can bring in an older audience, a more sophisticated audience. The other person who passed away this week was Victor Gorlick, who most people who are listening to this won't know, but a lot of us who are older comic fans know him simply because he's been the editor-in-chief at Archie since 1956. A lot of people worked with him over the years, including our friend Stephanie Coffell. And not only did no one say bad stuff about him, but they also talked about how he was one of the few people who had no problem changing with the times. He always would, if people came to him with new ideas, he would go, "Cool, let's try it." He always wanted to try new things. He always was on the lookout for new talent. Joe, you were a big fan of Three Geeks, if I remember right.
Oh, yeah.
Well, the guy who wrote and drew that could not get picked up at Marvel or DC. He's been working at Archie for 20 years now. So he didn't just look for, the standard Archie guys. He looked to the independents. He looked to young artists and young writers to bring them in and teach them the ropes, teach them what they were doing. And if they kept working, great. And if they didn't and moved on, they liked that as well. So he's going to be missed. Joe,
yes.
First off, are you buried under all the stuff from Fibber McGee's closet?
Not all of it, no. So
okay.
we better hurry up and get this podcast here over.
So it's time for you to talk your geeking. What are you geeking on?
I'd never give the conclusion last week to good English, I speak well, to the watch. The one where I had my watch that I had for 10 years.
Your watch wasn't working.
Yep. Well, my wife for my birthday got me a new watch.
Oh.
Another Timex, a little heavier, a little sturdier, but the same thing. Outer time with military time on the inside, a date, very much mechanical, none of this fancy Apple Watch BS. A little more expensive. I mean, I paid $20 for mine, but I do have a watch. So all ends well. I'm kind of getting sort of maybe almost there hooked on another series, 9/11 Reno. This is the one with Rob Lowe in it. I don't know if that crosses your consciousness, Cory. But it's funny because my wife and I are both, I'm a son, she's a daughter of a firefighter, our dads were firefighters. We grew up watching Emergency. Emergency was very much a show about what happens at the fire scene or the paramedic scene. And then they always had some B story going on with Roy or Gage or whatever. Occasionally they trip it up where you had like a Roy and Gage would be just getting off duty. We do a shift with their opposite, because they weren't on. They were on like 24/7, then they go home for a day. That's usually how fire departments work. So we thought, okay, we like Rob Lowe. We dug him in West Wing, Wayne's World. We thought we'd give it a try, and there's definitely much more going on with the individual characterizations of who the firefighters are, and pretty much everybody. I think other than Cory, did you ever watch Emergency as a kid?
Why, yes, I was hooked on it because my dad was in training to be an EMT when that
Ooh,
show was on.
yeah, that was cutting edge. It's real predominant now. I mean, even regular firefighters get EMT training. I think that was the first emergency episode, which I saw once on probably Nickelodeon or something, where they were in the field and they wanted to know if they didn't have permission to give life-saving drugs because it hadn't been passed yet. And meanwhile, Dr. Brackett and whoever were talking to the California legislature, and they thought, you know what, we're going to pass it. We're going to give it to him because if they don't, this guy's going to die. But if he does die because we give it to him, it's blah, 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 whatever. All ends well. So we're watching 9/11 Reno, and what they're doing is they're slowly giving hints to everybody. Rob Lowe's character was there at 9/11. He rebuilt the fire department that was utterly destroyed when the towers fell, and he's got lung cancer, probably from it. When he goes down to Reno, he's tasked with reforming a fire department that got blown up in a refinery explosion with only one of the original members surviving. They have a black guy, they have a Muslim woman, a gay guy, there's a newbie. You're getting these guys' stories really well. And Chris and I are kind of like, we're thinking, okay, we want to see some of the more firefighting action. They don't really do it. They get the call, they go to the fire. We never really see how it's resolved. I mean, in emergency, we follow them all the way to the hospital, or they wait till the fire's out or whatever. But they don't do that. And Chris and I are like really dissatisfied. We love the acting. We like the characterizations. We want to see more of the firefighting action. So we're slowly getting hooked into another show. Although every so often they are so outrageous, we're like, okay, I don't think we're watching another one. Then we watch the next one and I don't know. We'll see how long this one lasts. I haven't even seen the ratings, but according to them, it's the #1 watch show on Tuesday night in this category by Dobermans. I mentioned earlier.
Ooh, Dobermans like
I
it.
know. Yeah, you'd think Dalmatians would, but I started watching the Orville. I had kind of a roundabout way to it because I was just sitting. Chris was out. I was sitting at home, and I just spent the day doing eBay, and my brain was frazzled, and I thought, well, let's watch a little TV. Usually I watch the news and try to get some things off the recorder. And then nothing was really working for me, so I said, well, let's go flip on Disney Plus. And I went to go see the live action Aladdin, because why not? I didn't pay for it. I haven't seen it. Might as well go see it. And I thought, you know what? I think I just want to listen to the songs from the animated one. So I did that. I turned on the animated one, just flipped through the songs, Okay, where Genie comes out singing it, can your friends do this? Can your friends do that? I'm hoping I'm singing so bad that Disney won't sue us. I can show you the world, Arabian Nights, didn't watch the whole thing. And then instead of going back to watch the live action, that's where I went and, hey, I haven't finished Orville. So I'm like on episode 4 of Orville, first season. And that was fun. What the collapse was you heard earlier was me digging out a copy that I just got, Thor by Jason Aaron, the Complete Collection, Volume 2. I have not read it, and Cory, I bet you can guess why.
I don't know.
I don't have Volume 1 yet.
Oh, well,
Now,
that would be a good reason why.
I have spent a lot of time in the last podcast talking about the comic shops that I've gone to. I've gone to a lot of comic shops around here. I have not found Volume 1 anywhere. Anywhere. This is like a brand new book. It's in print. I haven't even seen I should have seen Volume 2 somewhere because I get mine once a month through Discount Comic Book Service. I figured, as I'm touring comic stores, if I see this, I will buy it. Did not see it anywhere. Not in Florida, not here. Comic retailers out there, I bought it on in-stock trades. I would have bought it from you, but you didn't have it in your freaking store. So I bought it from, I got a decent price on it. It was, on the eBays, they're going close to cover. So I didn't even, I wasn't even going to buy it on the eBays. I wanted to buy the book. I'm excited to read it because I read it off and on through the whole run. And now for me, it's all going to be brand new. And yeah, I probably should wait for the omnibus, but no, these complete collections are a solid read for what you pay for. So not only did I buy that, I bought the Peter David Hulk Omnibus #1. Why? Because I know Marvel's going to print #4 eventually. And just to top it off, because I was listening to Tony Isabella talk about how thrilled he was rereading the old Tigra stories he read in the complete Tigra collection. Stories he wrote, by the way. And I thought, you know what, that'll round it out. I had about $100 left in my, blow it fund from Florida, and I figured I'd buy those 3. Again, it doesn't help if you have like tons of old Thor books on your shelf. If you're not going to have the new ones, and again, I don't know, it's a $40 book. A lot of these books Cory and I talk about are $40 books. That's really expensive considering you could probably find a lot of the back issues for less. You could probably find the smaller collections for less. You could wait for the omnibus and probably get a much better deal per page count. Or you might be on Marvel Unlimited. But I was kind of shocked. I thought for sure this would be an obvious one to pick up, and it wasn't. Somebody got my money. So that was that was more of a freaking within a geeking, because I'm geeking that I'm getting it, and those other 2 books as well. Cory, what you geeking on?
I read Jim Ross's first volume of his autobiography called Slobberknocker. And why do I say it's the first volume? Because for a while it was the only book, but now he's going to be putting out a second book in a few months called Black Hat. The first book has his life up to 1999 when he came back to call Stone Cold versus The Rock. And that's where it ends. Really good book. It has the problem that a lot of these autobiographies have, and I don't know if it's me who gets irritated by it or what, but for the early days, it goes into a lot of detail. But the further along you go, the less and less detail you get. So in the beginning, you find out more about Cowboy Bob Orton's blind partner for page count than the entire Attitude Era. The Attitude Era is almost like, yeah, I really love Brian Pillman. He was really good. Then he died of an overdose. That was a sad day. Rather than going into, more detail on stuff like that. But overall, it was a good read. They had it on sale for Kindle on Friday for $1.99. So I picked it up, but I was at the group home a lot this weekend with, whenever there was quiet time, I was just flipping through the Kindle, reading it, and finished it up last night. Let's see. When I am at the gym and I do my time on the treadmill, I am watching Lost in Space on Netflix. I don't know if I've talked about it on the podcast before, but the original TV show Lost in Space. Joe, you remember that show, right?
Don't make me do it.
I hated that show so much. Even as a kid, I hated it. It was stupid. It was goofy. It looked terrible. And Dr. Smith annoyed the hell out of me. If I were on the Jupiter 2, I would have put him in the airlock and vented him out into space. First time he did something that screwed things up, you're gone. You're dead. Goodbye. The movie with Matt LeBlanc, just as bad. Just as bad. So I put off watching Lost in Space because I hated every other version of Lost in Space. This series is way cool. So cool. So well done. The best analog to it is it reminds me a lot of 24 in that it's a constant cliffhanger machine. Everything is a cliffhanger. Everything there's constant crisis, but it keeps you watching. So you want to know what's going to happen next. How did they get out of this? Where do they go from here? How can they possibly get out of that? And I think that's it works well for the series because it takes that aspect of the original series and actually ramps it up to where you give a damn. Whereas before it's like, ugh, how are they going to beat the lettuce guy? I don't care. Comic-wise, the 1980s American Comic Book Chronicles is being re-released and will be in your shops next week. That's the one that went out of print and was selling for $500 or $600 on the Amazons and the eBays. It's getting reprinted. They did a Kickstarter to reprint it. I did not jump on the Kickstarter because I knew it'd be in previews and I'd be able to get it cheaper. So, but I ordered it through the previews. It'll be showing up, but you can go to your comic shop next week and order it, or you can go out on the Amazon and order it. The American Comic Book Chronicles is a fantastic, fantastic series. I think I gave Joe, what volume did I give you? The 60s or 70s?
I don't remember. Probably, I think the 70s.
But it's a fantastic book. If you care anything at all about learning comic book history, that's the book to read. And I actually gave it to one of my friends at work who likes history but doesn't know anything about comics, and she absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved it. I got caught up on Mark Waid's Doctor Strange. I had fallen way behind. And then when they started with the new #1, it's like, okay, I'll get all caught up. Wow, is that book good? And it's not like the Mark Waid stuff I'm used to, because Mark Waid is very much drenches his stuff in Marvel history, but still goes in new places. This doesn't tie in with Marvel history much at all. It's very much going in new places and taking Doctor Strange to interesting ideas. It has touches of the old stuff, but it also really uses those older characters in a different way. And I cannot recommend it enough. It's just a fantastic. And the last thing I'm going to point out is something that's the size of an omnibus, but is cheaper than an omnibus, and I cannot recommend it enough to everyone listening to this. Everyone who's listening to this. Go to your comic shop. Go to wherever you buy your comics online. Go buy Choke Gasp, the best of EC Comics. This is a monster huge book that reprints the best EC stories ever done. It's divided by artist, so each of the EC artists has their own section. The only complaint I have is that there were only 2 Bernie Krigstein stories, and they could have put them all in there. But if you've ever heard me talk about EC and how great EC Comics was, pick up this book so you can see what their stories were. If you're an EC fan but you don't have a complete collection, this will point you toward what the best stuff was. If you're like me and you have an EC that's got them all, this is a great book to have so that you don't have to dig through, oh, okay, well, I want to read this story from Frontline Combat and this story from Two-Fisted Tales and this story from Impact and this story from Tales from the Crypt. Nope, all the best stuff right there, one book. It's the size of an omnibus, and it's only $50. It is a bargain. It's a huge, beautiful, well-put-together hardcover. You can buy it online for probably between $30 and $40. Get this book. I am so geeking over it. It's fantastic. Just a beautiful, beautiful book. Oh, I forgot there was an artist I was going to recommend. I just sent Joe the recommendation. There's an artist on eBay. Her name is Katie Irons, but you can find her stuff at ULYLLA Designs. She's a British artist. She's doing these really cool reimaginings of all sorts of Marvel, DC, video game characters. I saw some of her art, hit a like on it, and she immediately said, hey, I saw you like that. Are you interested in prints? She doesn't have a web page right now because her web page got all screwed up, but she does sell prints of her work and she does do original art. Remember, Joe, when I told you about Sora Song?
Yeah.
This is the art is very different, but it's the same sort of thing where this artist who I don't know why they're not working in comics, but their stuff is just beautiful. So it's at ULYLLA Designs on the Facebooks. And when you go there, tell her I sent you, because I'm going to be getting a Spider-Gwen from her in a couple of months. That's why, hey, look, I did all those extra shifts. I could probably get a Spider-Gwen from her now. Believe it or not, kids, you've listened to us blather on about funny books for 2 hours. So Mosaic Chong will be very happy.
Yes.
And as we say every week, the comic we like the least, we still like better than the comic that you like the most. Joe?
Cory, I was at a very sophisticated dinner party the other day.
I don't believe it.
Oh, I did what you'd expect. I farted loudly. One of the guests, appalled, turned to me and looked at me indignantly. How dare you fart in front of my wife? I said, I'm sorry. I didn't realize it was her turn next. Well, Cory, you know what's brown and sticky?
A stick.
He's catching on, folks. Hit my music.